Do you comfort eat? In other words, is food your way of coping with life? When you get stressed or anxious, upset, angry, frustrated, excited, is food the place you go to comfort yourself, to soothe yourself? Where, when you're eating that food, it could be high sugar food, or it can also be salty and savory, high fat, high sugar and high carb food. Could be either or both. But when you eat that kind of food, you just feel soothed, you feel better. Temporary, but somehow it gives you some sense of comfort. Or maybe you're the kind of person who is really, really good during the day, but when it comes to the evening, then these cravings come out and all you want to do is just eat. Put something in your mouth and maybe you're bored or there's a sense of emptiness, and somehow that food in your mouth fills that emptiness. And perhaps you can't stop. Like they say, 1 is too much and 100 isn't enough. Where when you start eating, you just can't stop. You know you should. You know you're going to feel terrible afterwards or in the morning, but somehow you just can't stop. And then after a while, you're not even tasting the food. You're just stuffing it down your mouth. Or maybe you're the kind of person who swings between the extremes. You get moments in your life, seasons, where you're really good and you're quite strict and you almost, in a way, starve yourself. You eat really healthy and you're disciplined, but very minimally. And then, boom, you swing to the other side where you just overindulge and binge and just go crazy. And then you swing back to restrictive eating, and then you swing back to overeating and binging. Maybe you do that yo-yo, pendulum thing, and you've been around that many, many times. Or maybe you're the kind of person who likes to eat in secret, away from other prying eyes. And again, there's a sense of compulsiveness, a sense where it's not just food, it's so much more than just food or eating. There's comfort, there's soothing. In today's video, I'm going to cover 4 things. The first is that if that applies to you, or if you comfort eat and you use food to cope, it's not your fault. The second thing is that food and overeating and binging and comfort eating is often just a symptom. It's not the cause. The third thing is that as humans, we all have a drug of choice. In other words, something that we use to not feel, to numb out, to avoid that uncomfortable feeling, sensation that we don't want to be with. And so we use something to stay away from that. And the fourth thing is that there is a way out of it. And I'm going to tell you about a 6-step process and other things that you might try for yourself to support yourself on this journey where you can find freedom around food and not feel enslaved by it. So my name is Julia and I'm a Spiral Connector life coach. And all those things that I spoke about earlier, they all apply to me, and I'm sure to many of you. I grew up Italian and food was just part of our culture. And I learned very early in my life that food was a way to smooth things out, to get attention, to get love. That food was something, a go-to when things were difficult. And when my mom died suddenly when I was 14, really within a week, she got sick, she passed away, I just shut down. I went to live in my head where it was safe. I didn't have to feel anything, so I just disconnected. I split off from my body and went to live in my head where it was safe. I didn't have to feel the pain of loss or grief. And that happens with many of us, most of us who experience trauma. We disconnect. we split off, and usually we go and live in our heads because we can navigate life through thinking, planning, ruminating, worrying. A whole lot of stuff happens in the mind, but we are safe and cut off from our feeling, sensing bodies. And I did that for many, many years. It served me well for a while until it didn't. And I used to overeat quite a lot, but I was quite skinny, so it didn't matter. And then I remember it was 1995, it was the Rugby World Cup, and I was doing some holiday work. I was helping out at a catering company. And we had started really early that morning, preparing our area with food for the people who came to the Rugby World Cup. And it was cold, it had been a very long day, I'd been eating throughout the day, and I was so tired. I was cold, and I just wanted to go home. And when I got home by the end of the day, I just felt terrible. I felt really stuffed and full and gross. And I just thought, oh, I can't go to bed like this. So I just brought it all up. And something switched in my mind. Something about, well, how wonderful. If I can eat food and bring it up. Wow, that's fantastic. Or so I thought. And that's what I did. And in the beginning, I was sort of in control. I thought, no, this is fine. I'm in control of this. I know what I'm doing. But slowly, slowly, it started to erode my world or penetrate, infiltrate my world. And I started to spiral down and down and down into this really black hole where I felt completely out of control. I couldn't will myself back to normal eating. I felt intense shame. I didn't tell anybody. It was my secret. I was disgusted with myself. I rejected myself. I hated being in a body. I felt intense remorse and extremely helpless and hopeless. And I became really depressed. And I tried to attempt suicide, which obviously didn't work because I'm still here. But I remember so clearly coming back from the hospital, and I was lying in my apartment on the floor. And I thought, oh, what do I do now? You know, trying to leave and kill myself didn't work. And if I am going to continue in this life, then something has to change because this is hell. And I cannot live this way anymore. So slowly, slowly, after many, many, many years, through grace and many wonderful teachers, I found a way out of this black hole. We all find our way. There are so many pathways to wholeness and healing. For me, what really helped was movement and dance. I did movement medicine for many years, many, many workshops. I met a wonderful teacher, Colleen Joy, who also helped me tremendously come from my head back into my heart. Dance was incredible, as I said, and Tantra. I met Shakti, who really helped me deepen into embodiment and being present with this now moment and with whatever was arising in this moment. And then, through life, later on, non-duality and so on. But eventually coming to a place in my life where I really feel free in my relationship with food. I'm no longer tormented and enslaved by it. So what I wanted to share today was, it's not your fault. If you can relate to the story in some way, shape or form, it's not your fault. It wasn't my fault that my mom died suddenly. It wasn't my fault that I used food to cope. It wasn't my fault that I didn't know a more skillful way in dealing with the enormity that I was facing at 14, the grief, the loss. It's not my fault. It's not your fault. The second thing was that whatever issue you have around food, it's just the symptom. And trying to manage the symptom is never going to lead to deep and true and sustainable healing. We have to go down, 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 much deeper to the cause, which is usually unconscious, mental, emotional, spiritual, but it's much deeper than just the physical. That's really where the causative is. The third thing is that we all have a drug of choice that we use to avoid uncomfortable feelings. until we don't, until we do the healing. And somehow when I realized that, it helped me so much, because I started to come out and talk about what was happening. And it helped me tremendously with the shame. And I realized, I'm not alone. There's nothing, fundamentally wrong or bad about me. And we all, as humans, find ways of coping, of surviving. And part of our survival strategy is to avoid pain. It's just part of how we are designed as humans. We avoid the pain, the places in our being where it hurts, where there's suffering and uncomfortable feelings. And these drugs of choice are numerous. Overthinking, planning, strategizing, controlling, worrying. Social media is a wonderful drug of choice. Eating, pornography, shopping, keeping busy, work, alcohol, drugs. There are so many ways that us humans find to avoid the places that are sore. The way we numb ourselves out so we don't have to feel those uncomfortable feelings. It's quite normal, quite a normal part of being human. And the fourth thing is, how do we help ourselves? And I'm going to discuss that in our next video. So I hope today has been helpful. If you find that you comfort eat, that you use food to cope with your life, and that it's your way of filling something inside, like it was for me. Food was my mother. It was soothing and comforting. Know that it's not your fault. Know that comfort eating, overeating is just a symptom. It's not the cause. Know that as humans, we all have a way, a drug of choice that we use to numb out, to not feel, to disconnect and stay away from pain. And that there is a way out of this. So join me in my next video, and we'll look more at what can we do to help ourselves get out of the hole, out of this pattern, out of this restrictive way of existing, because there is a way. I hope you'll join me then.